Well, let's move on to our deep dive for today. Temu, we got cut off earlier, but we got a solid hour to break down Temu for you. It's a fascinating story, and it's one of the sloppiest apps out there right now. It's the cream of the crop. It's the slop of the slop.
Well, it's the slop of the slop. We'll get into why it's the slop of the slop. Let's start. Let's go back in time first and talk about the founders. Incredible, sort of history getting to this point, because he's really an absolute dog. Even though he's making slop, he's a dog, right?
He's a dog.
So you have somewhere you want to start, or you want me to dive in?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to start with these tweets just to kind of set the table. The first one is from L3 Tweet Engineer, mega-based Chad. I think he's been on the show before. He said, just downloaded Temu. New users can sign up with Twitter. You're immediately greeted by a $250 coupon, scam likely. The homepage is showing me fake sneakers, BDSM stuff, and a gun. I love it. This is from 2023. He was early. So Temu is a spinoff of Pinduoduo PDD, which we'll break down the whole history here. But Temu was brand new. They launched in 2022, and then they rocketed to massive numbers very quickly. But I had the exact same experience where I opened up Temu to look at something, and it was like, you just won everything in the store for free. And it's just, prices are suspiciously low.
To put this into perspective, I think a lot of people Temu hit their consciousness when they ran a Super Bowl ad.
That's true.
In early 2023, they ran this terrible ad that just said "shop like a billionaire," and it's just all these like slop products.
Yep.
And so, I think he posted this because this is probably 10 months after the initial Super Bowl ad. But they had gone number one in the App Store again. So a lot of people signing up for the product when this was shared.
Yeah. So we'll go through the full history, but the Temu explosion is crazy. So they launched Temu, and it is a subsidiary, so the business was already going, but they launched it in September of 2022. I think the headquarters was in Boston, interestingly enough. And then they run a Super Bowl ad, and they're just spending billions of dollars advertising Temu. And by August of 2023, so less than 1 year, they had reached $18 billion in gross merchandise sales for the full year. Isn't that insane?
So
50 million active users.
We are going to absolutely, we're going to be dunking on the slop for the next hour, but I'm not here to take away from the execution. What they've done, they're selling absolute garbage, but what they've done is extremely impressive.
You got to hand it to him. The founder's an absolute dog, and if he were in America still, we would be popping Dom Perignon for him. This guy is one of us. He just happened to be playing for the wrong team.
Yeah.
So get back over here, and we'll break it down, because this guy was in America for a while, and should have stayed here. Should have built the slop apps for us. Send him over there. So the reason this is at the top of everyone's newsfeed right now is because recently there was a change in tariff structure that could put Temu and Shein and these Chinese drop shippers effectively out of business. They've been exploiting a loophole. Let's break it down from Melissa Chen, who is quote tweeting Ryan Peterson. Ryan says, de minimis entries from China shut down effectively Tuesday. Melissa Chen says, winning. This is huge. Temu, Shein, and all these tacky fast fashion companies that sell mostly crap have long relied on an unfair and unwarranted trade advantage. They have long been beneficiaries of what's called the de minimis loophole. This loophole allows goods to be shipped directly from overseas to American consumers so long as the value of each package is under $800 without any customs declaration. It's cheap, direct, untaxed, and unregulated. It's a law that existed since the 1930s, long before the internet and the existence of e-commerce retailers. Last year, the U.S. received 1 billion packages from China through this loophole. CBP cannot possibly inspect items at this scale, so things do slip through the crack. Unsafe items, knockoffs, products made with forced labor from Xinjiang, and yes, chemicals that can be used to make fentanyl. Wow. To put things in context, in 2022, Gap paid $700 million, while H&M paid $200 million in import taxes. Temu paid $0. Free trade, once again, is not free. It's flooding our markets with cheap, crappy, potentially toxic goods, gutting our own retail markets, and allowing unsavory foreign competitors to exploit loopholes and gain unfair competitive advantage over retailers who have to play by the rules because of geography. Now, we have closed this loophole for goods coming into China. And Sean McGuire's there to say, great tweet. So we love to see breakdowns like that. But let's move on to the history of Pinduoduo, PDD, and Temu and how we got here. So 2015, Colin Wang, who was working at Google, establishes Pinduoduo.
And let's give a little bit more backstory, because he wasn't just working at Google. He went to college in the US.
Yep.
Joins Google the year that they IPO.
Yep.
So he literally joins at an incredible time, probably one of the best pre-IPO company probably to join in history. Incredible timing, right out of school. And yeah, so he benefits right away. He basically immediately gets a bag from that, which ends up helping him start his entrepreneurial journey. He then goes on to actually launch Google in China. And so this was from, look back at my notes, from 2006 to 2010, he's the lead on launching Google in China, and it absolutely goes terribly. It doesn't really get adoption. I'm sure they're fighting a lot of sort of regulatory stuff internally in China. China didn't want US tech products to get real market share in China. And so by the end, he basically, in 2010, they just give up. Google pulls out of China, and and so in many ways, I'm sure he did well personally from that, but it wasn't exactly a huge win. But it did give him, I'm sure, high quality experience in terms of building the most scaled consumer products, of all time.
I mean, the guy seems like a great engineer, master networker. Somebody said, that Jeremy Giffon tweet that's like, you can basically post your way onto a private plane. If you're a good poster, like the most elite in the society, like the absolute aristocracy will just pluck you out of obscurity. And it seems like that's what happened. He was posting something or cold emailing or something, and gets linked up to effectively the Warren Buffett of China. And that guy becomes his mentor. And then that guy pays like $250K to have dinner with the actual Warren Buffett. And so there's a picture of Colin, the Warren Buffett of China.
Brings Colin, the Temu founder,
to
this dinner.
Yeah. And so very quickly, Colin is moved out of, rank and file at Google, obviously doing very well, but it's a huge organization. He's not really going to be able to steer that giant cruise ship, to networking with both the Warren Buffett of America and the Warren Buffett of China. And that sets himself up just to immediately raise tons of money and just do, amazing things.
Yeah. And so around this time this is prior to actually incorporating PDD in 2015, he had built some mobile shopping apps. So his time at Google had got him excited about shopping. He did all right from those. He had a couple exits, and then he starts a gaming studio, which is sort of foreshadowing for all the gamification of Temu and PDD that comes later. And the gaming studio is just throwing out absolute slop too. So if you ever remember being a kid and getting ads for like Mafia City, that was a game that his game studio created, which was like an early version of one of these games that was meant to be highly addictive, that you were meant to come in. And a lot of people would just come in and play for free briefly, and then they'd get certain whales that would end up spending a ton of money. And he also had some less savory apps on there where you could build a harem of girlfriends that you could then go around and fight other people with. So you could it was like an app that you'd build your harem, and then you'd take them out and go on the attack. So Colin's an absolute dog for that one. But I'm sure he found some users, and that company ended up getting acquired and then changed hands a couple times. And Mafia City is actually still a game that you can download in the App Store and use. So go check it out.
Yeah, everything about this story is just unbelievable evidence that Colin plays hard-nosed, smash-mouth football on the business gridiron. And
he's the Saquon Barkley of business in China.
100%. And you don't become the richest man in China, even for a small amount of time, without being absolutely the most aggressive you can be and just maxing out every single loophole. There's a whole bunch of things in here about like importing like gambling style mechanics and gamification and financialization. And it's just like, let's do all of the most extreme business practices. What's the tariff loophole? How low quality can we go on the goods? Let's add gambling and pay, buy now, pay later. It's just all of the most extreme like dynamics to absolutely squeeze out every penny of performance from the business.
Yeah.
So let's go through the timeline here. We'll focus just on PDD. Former Google engineer Colin Wang establishes Pinduoduo in Shanghai as a social e-commerce platform focused on agriculture and group buying deals. Early angel funding of approximately $8 million is provided by Wang and other investors. And so the idea here was if you're in China and you're in like the middle or lower class, you want to buy a whole bunch of mangoes, they would focus on just, hey, you're going to buy 12 mangoes. 2 of them might be rotten, but it's going to be so cheap that we're basically not going to invest in quality control at all. And also they're bringing in this like social mechanic where group buying, basically you click on the item you want and then you send that link to everyone else in your social network on WeChat. And the more people that buy, the lower price, the lower the price goes. And this makes sense. I mean, in America, there's plenty of times where you buy 1 t-shirt, it's $30. You buy 10 t-shirts, it's $20. If you're buying 1,000 t-shirts, you can get the price down to $10. But it's like, what if you could do this for anything on Amazon immediately just with your social network? And that creates insane growth. It's like this insane viral growth mechanism.
Shopping has historically, and in the West, it still is primarily the single player experience. You go on, you buy the product. He turned it into this multiplayer experience that had this crazy viral loop of just building out these networks where one person wants mangoes and suddenly 20 people are buying mangoes. And one thing that they did, you can think of what PDD early on is similar to what Amazon did with books. Amazon picked books for very specific reasons. They onboarded sellers, which were bookstores and individuals that had books they wanted to sell. And what PDD did was at the time in China, there were the sort of agricultural production in China was super fragmented. And so you had tons of individuals and small farms that would be producing goods, and they had to sell through distributors, which would then go into actual like retail stores and other markets that you could purchase them. And what PDD did was similar to Amazon, where they said, hey, why don't you just come on and list your product for sale and we'll find you the customers. And you're going to make more money than you would if you were selling through this distributor. And they were basically like cutting out the historical middleman there was 2 middlemen, basically. There was the distributor, the sort of rep, and then the actual retail store. And so PDD took over both those roles in terms of bridging the farmers and producers and the end consumer. Yep. The other thing that PDD benefited from is that there was mobile devices had penetrated into the agricultural regions of China. And so farmers would start selling their products on social media using like videos. And I remember during this time, some of these videos would start going viral. It'd be like, you'd be scrolling and it'd just be some guys like, showing his mangoes off or whatever. And you'd be like, all right, I'm in the wrong side of the internet. But anyway, so this was like basically benefiting from social commerce, the influencer explosion, the explosion of mobile device usage all across China, not just in cities. And so the timing here, he really benefited from.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like product led growth, innovation, like a lot of trends coming together and just wedging more and more things and then just like rolling them out in the app super fast. Like when there's an exploit, he capitalizes, and that's what's fueled the growth so quickly.
And another thing they did, they basically sold the product at cost, and so they raised $8 million to get this thing off the ground, and they were fine if they didn't make any money on the direct sale. They just wanted market share. And they also took a more sort of asset light approach than some of the other players that actually owned logistics. They owned warehouses and stuff like that. And so PDD was fully focused on like enabling this sort of direct to consumer model where, producer would list product on the platform. They had their own social presence. they had these group buying experiences, but then third-party logistics and warehouses would actually do all of the fulfillment. And so PDD could afford to basically sell products at cost without taking massive, massive losses that, for example, Amazon had to take, really aggressive losses for quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean the Amazon versus Temu or PDD comparison is crazy. Take a look at this. So you can think about Amazon right now versus PDD. Amazon's almost 20 times the size, but in terms of net income in 2023, Amazon produced 30 billion, PDD produced 8.5 billion. And
Crazy.
So the margins are just the net profit margins at Amazon 5% versus 25%. And a lot of that comes down to just super asset light.
Temu looks more like a software business and Amazon looks more like a grocery store, right?
Totally.
From a margin profile standpoint.
Totally. Yeah. And massive revenue growth. Interestingly, I wanted to answer the question of like, is Temu actually putting pressure on Amazon? Has there been like a market change in Amazon's business because of the Temu threat? And what's interesting is that something like 95%, 98% of Temu shoppers also shop on Amazon. The Temu, like the slop that they're buying is actually additive. It's more like gambling money than actually shopping money. Because if you want just, if you're actually in the market for like, I want Kleenex and I want it to be good and not fall apart and give me allergies or something, like you're going to go to Amazon, buy the name brand and you're going to count on that. But if you just want like, oh yeah, some random thing that's like a funny joke, like, yeah, I'll buy that on Temu.
No, my biggest frustration with Amazon is I wish that I could shop on Amazon by sorting only for brands that have existed for more than 50
that's good.
years.
Lindy filter. The Lindy filter.
Because one of my, the greatest annoyance on Amazon is like I'm shopping and I want something as simple as like a paper towel holder. And then I order it and I get it and it's like the worst product that I've ever got. I'm like, this should just be a piece of metal into another piece of metal and it should just be solid. And because of the hyper optimizations and all these sellers competing and things like that, you end up having to dig through pages. You might take you 4 pages to find a product that costs marginally more, but is going to last for 20 years versus, the Temu version, which will last for a year and not even function well.
Dude, so Amazon has been forced to launch Amazon Haul, which is their Temu competitor, and they have price caps for items that you list on Amazon Haul because they want to be competitive. And the price caps are shocking. Like $13 is the max price you can charge for a guitar. I think of a guitar as like a several $100 purchase at least. Couches. I think of a couch as like, to get in the game, it's like $1,000. Maybe you go to IKEA, a couple $100. The max price for a couch at Amazon Haul is $20. $20. That's just like scarily low. I don't want to sit on a couch that's only $20. I know that there's people that are running Airbnbs right now that are like, oh, this is amazing for my margins. Like I got to just buy this $20 couch. But it's like at that price, it's like, it feels dangerous. Like how can you possibly make a couch for $20? Like you're not even using wood at that point. Like what are you making it out of?
Yeah. And the dark side of this story is that many people have accused PDD and Temu of using slave labor. So if you strip out all of the labor costs, but even then it's still hard to kind of conceptualize how the actual material cost would be less than $20 for something as significant as a couch or a guitar being $13. So anyways, let's get back into the timeline.
So they raise they raise a bunch of money really, really quickly. They incorporated in 2015 with that $8 million round. 2016, they raised Series A, Series B, $110 million. Gaorong Capital, formerly Banyan, does the seed stake. They get a 7% stake. Now it's worth $10 billion. Nice. Tencent Holdings comes in and becomes a strategic investor. They get a 16% stake. That's $20 billion. Sequoia Capital China gets a 6% stake pre-2022, multi-billion-dollar value. And then there's a couple other founders and early executives that all made hundreds of millions of dollars.
You already know from listening to this, but like this guy didn't come out of nowhere. He went to college in the US. goes and works at Google, actually leads an entire, go to market into China while at Google,
Yep.
then has a couple smaller successes in mobile shopping, then launches a successful mobile game studio. And so by the time he's doing PDD, he is very well set up to take on this much capital in this
Totally.
short of a time because he's a savage operator, right?
Savage.
And the actual performance really backs it up. And so they're raising all this money, but it's on the back of just taking a ton of market share with a product that was very early for its time, right? We didn't see, you remember in 2021, 2022, every Western VC was talking about social commerce and live streaming and all these things.
Yep.
All of that was because that PDD was just dominating in China.
Totally. Yeah.
And they didn't really, it's not that live streaming with Temu, it's Temu, right?
That would be the respectful way to call it. I call it Temu.
Yeah. Temu. We'll stick with Temu.
Who knows?
Pure disrespect. What's crazy is I was living in China like during this era in 2016, and I was working at a startup accelerator that was and helping a company that was taking a bunch of international vendors, specifically in shopping and sort of luxury goods, and trying to sell into China.
Yep.
And they had raised some funding. It was fine, but the CEO and the CTO and the COO were based in Israel. Mm-hmm. And they absolutely hated living in China, and their entire business was based around China. So they would come in for like 2 weeks and then like bounce. Yeah. And I was like, guys, like this is
unsustainable.
I was just an intern, but I was like, yeah, this is, if you shouldn't probably hate the country that you're trying to sell into. But anyways, meanwhile, Temu is just focused, just absolutely dominating.
Yeah, they're just ripping. So established in September 2015, they've raised over $100 million by 2016. Series C comes in early 2017, less than a year and a half. They raised 213 million in a Series C round, and by late 2017, their gross merchandise volume, their GMV, reaches $15 billion just 2 years after launch. And so, even with super slim margins, they're well over 100 million in ARR, and this is one of the fastest growing companies and businesses in history. And of course, that's going to rocket the stock. So they do a pre-IPO funding in April of 2018. They raised $1.2 billion Series D. Led by major investors. They're valued around $15 to $20 billion. And then July 26th, 2018, they go public on the NASDAQ, raising $1.6 billion. The IPO values the company at $24 billion and marks its rise to over 340 million active buyers in under 3 years. But then things get tricky. There's a counterfeit crackdown shortly after the IPO. PDD faces scrutiny over counterfeit and pirated goods. So you just go on there and you get some complete knockoff that was just made in a fake factory that wasn't actually made by that company. Of course, companies are going to be upset. At one point, Amazon has a price match like service where if you are selling on Amazon and then you go over to Walmart and you undercut Amazon will not give you the buy box. They won't let you win the top slot if you're not price matching on Amazon. But Temu was so aggressive and so sloppy that they couldn't basically implement this process. And they were like, look, we're not even going to enforce it with Temu products because it's just slop. It's not even close. And so a lot of stuff was just absolute junk. And that was kind of the model. And also everyone kind of knew that.
Those products were widely available when I was in Shanghai. You could go to, there were specific markets where they would have retail stores. It'd be like the Nike store, the Adidas store, the Canada Goose store, and everything in them was
fake.
95% less than like the traditional retail value.
Yeah.
And about 60% is good.
Yeah.
But the demand you can imagine for sort of name brands that are 95% off effectively was insane. So they're
So the super funny thing here is that it's not just American companies versus versus PDD in China. There's actually Chinese companies that are like, hey, we're Foxconn. We make iPhones for Apple. Like, don't make fake iPhones here. Like this is screwing us, and we're a Chinese company. And so Chinese companies are accusing PDD of counterfeiting and pirating goods that they're making and selling on Amazon. And so there's an investigation by China's market regulator, and this leads PDD to purge 4.3 million suspect listings and tighten its policies. But of course, like, how long would that last? And so in January of 2019, there's this security incident where hackers exploit a systems loophole to steal tens of millions of yuan in discount vouchers. This always happens whenever there's like some referral program or some discount program. I remember there was some guy on Twitter who's bragging about basically defrauding Uber Eats with like all these referral tokens, just getting people on Mechanical Turk to sign up and get him money. And he was like, I have free Uber Eats forever. And I was like, you shouldn't publish about this. This is a violation of the terms.
It's just wrong.
It's also just morally wrong to steal. Yeah. Like, how have we gotten so lost here? And so PDD cooperates with authorities to apprehend the perpetrators and patch its systems. They continue to expand their markets in 2019. The gamified team purchase model drives explosive growth, making PDD's China's third largest e-commerce site by GMV and active buyers. So it's Alibaba and then JD.com, which I don't think is related to JD Vance, but it's certainly a big beast over there. By the end of the year, the platform approaches over 500 million active buyers, so they are on a tear. Then early 2020, the agriculture focus and COVID response amid the pandemic, PDD doubles down on its agricultural roots by launching programs to help rural farmers sell produce online. This is huge because China had insane lockdowns. Everyone is ordering online more than ever, especially produce, especially groceries. People need to get food more than anything else. And so it's another explosive growth period for PDD. They just can't miss. Then in 2020, Colin Wang steps down as CEO, appointing Chen Li as the new chief executive while remaining chairman to focus on long-term strategy and research. And I think there's something going on where the pressure is starting to build. PDD is becoming a more controversial company. And Colin's like, yeah, I'm going to dip before I get Jack Mod, you know? Because when you scrape the heavens in China and you become the richest man, you get a little bit of a target on your back. So you got to just pivot into teaching English somewhere and resting on your laurels.
A little bit. It's a dangerous position.
It's a dangerous game. Over there, you become the richest man. You don't exactly get to be the right-hand man of the person who runs the country, unfortunately. America's just built different, you know?
Yeah.
Over here, you get a .gov email address.
Yes.
And so economic challenges in late 2020 drive more consumers to PDD for affordable essentials, with annual active buyers reaching 585 million by year end.
Yeah, they have this interesting demand dynamic where if the economy is doing well, then people have like a bunch of extra cash that they're willing to just blow on basically
slop.
PDD is like slop, gambling on consumer goods. Hey, I'm buying this product for $3. Maybe it's
good.
Maybe it's actually fine.
Yep.
You don't know. And then simultaneously, if the economy is not doing well, there's also an increased demand because people are saying, I don't want to, it'd be like saying, I don't want to go shop at Target. I'm going to go to this like discount store and because I can spend $50 and get a lot more for my money. So same dynamic as somebody might be saying, I'm not going to go on Alibaba or the Chinese, Target equivalent. I'm going to go on PDD and get more for my money.
Yeah. And so in January 2021, there's this work culture controversy. This is terrifying and very sad. The deaths of 2 employees within a short span spark public outcry over the brutal 996 overtime culture in China's tech industry. And I believe someone affiliated with the company made some callous comment being like, yeah, like we work hard, people are going to die, which is obviously way too far, way over the line. And the founder eventually steps down. Colin Wang resigns as chairman and leaves the board to pursue research in food and life sciences, while CEO Chen Lei assumes the chairman role after Wang relinquishes super voting rights.
That's the Chinese equivalent of I'm going to go spend time, long overdue time with my family. I'm going to pursue research in life sciences.
Yeah, it is crazy to work people to death. That's unacceptable and something that only happens in China, unfortunately.
I mean, that's not true. We just had that issue. I forget which bank. It wasn't
True. Yeah, I did see that.
Jeffrey, and it wasn't Jeffries.
No, I've been seeing that.
But no, there was, a
investment banker,
a young investment banker that was being worked, basically 20 hours a day for a long period of time, and was telling his friends like that he wasn't doing well, and then just died from basically overworking.
It's not good.
Anyways, yeah, and in that case, the investment bank had slides that were basically promoting the fact that their associates were available around the clock.
Yeah.
And so that again, it's not just a China thing, but yeah, it's possible to work too much.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we always say, you gotta, like Naval says, work like a lion. There are days when you should be working 20 hours a day, but if it's 20 hours a day for years straight with no days off, you're going to burn out. That's not good. You got to be ready.
4 weeks in a row, right? It's not sustainable at a certain point.
Sprints here and there, super important.
We are working up to 140 hours of content a week, though.
Yes.
Our goal is to get there. So thank you everybody for your patience, for trying to just ramp up to it.
Yeah. And so in May of 2021, Shanghai's Consumer Council criticized PDD for issuing fake products, false advertising, and poor after-sales service. Regulators ordered the company to rectify consumer rights problems, prompting PDD to pledge stronger merchant oversight. In late August of 2021, PDD posted its first ever profitable quarter. So from 2015 to 2021, just 6 years, now they're profitable. 2 billion yuan operating profit and an 89% year-on-year revenue jump. So they're still basically doubling 6 years into the business. Just fantastic growth. Instead of taking the profits as cash, the company announces a $10 billion yuan agriculture initiative to reinvest in agri-tech, farmer support, and rural development. And so in 2022,
yeah, because one thing that might sound strange to some people, but we think of Temu as just like slop consumer goods. In China, people are still using it very actively to buy produce and things like that. So they want to invest in the actual agriculture industry in China, because PDD's China business specifically is a grocery store alternative. It's not just these ultra low cost consumer goods.
Yeah. And so they're continuing to grow. The platform is now handling 4.9 trillion yuan, about 590 billion in GMV, and generating annual revenue of roughly 14.7 billion US dollars, solidifying its profitability. And with all this money, they come to the United States and they launch Temu. The parent company, now PDD Holdings, launches Temu, a discount shopping app targeting overseas markets because it's specifically taking advantage of that tariff loophole. Temu goes live in the United States, offering ultra low priced goods shipped directly from China, and quickly climbs the download charts. And I think this is so interesting because I've been in e-commerce for 15 years or something now, and the wisdom has always been, you got to get on Prime. You got to be faster with shipping. Everyone cares about page load speed and shipping time, and Americans are willing to pay for that. And Colin just realized that there is a contrarian position here, which is, hey, maybe there's certain products and certain segments of the American market where people are more than happy to trade fast shipping for lower prices. And so no one is really looking at that.
It comes down to a value exchange thing. I'm happy to pay slightly more to get a product tomorrow with zero effort on my side. And then on the other end, there's people that are happy to wait a week to get something if they're going to get 10 items for the cost of 2 items, right?
Exactly.
So it's just a value exchange thing.
Yeah. But it was really, really overlooked in the e-commerce market. And so, with the launch of Temu, the company reorganizes under PDD Holdings, a new holding structure encompassing both PDD and Temu. In December, fast fashion rival Shein initiates legal action against Temu, marking the start of a high-profile legal tussle. And I didn't know this. Do you know where the name Shein comes from? It's Shein. and it's like she's in.
She's in.
Yeah,
She
like she's
they
in. Like
they were sitting in Shanghai being like, yeah, we got the name. This
we
is
got the
it.
name.
This is so cool. And this also, by the way, just to reference an earlier point. So this is like right around the time that they launched the Super Bowl ad that we mentioned yesterday. And I do remember not yesterday, sorry, earlier in the show. Um, I do remember when that ad dropped, and I
Yeah,
remember seeing it live, thinking to myself, this is the worst ad I've ever seen. It's like it's not westernized at all. This is obviously a
totally.
Western audience. It has this tagline that says "Shop like a billionaire," which felt super out of touch.
Yep.
Um, but ultimately, I wasn't the target audience for it. I've never
Yep.
purchased anything on Temu, and if you think about that concept of shop like a billionaire, some people are thinking, okay, billionaires are just buying like, infinite amount of goods at all points and
Yeah.
not caring about the price. And that is the experience that they provide, right? You can go on
Yeah.
there and buy 30 items and it'll cost you, the same price as, I don't know, a
Yeah.
small like grocery,
The funny thing is, if you ever go over to billionaire's house, like it's always like the most sparsely populated house. Like it's
Yeah.
not just junk everywhere. Like,
Well, yeah, it's because their items are spread across like at least 5 homes.
I guess, but even then, it's like most super rich people are pretty discerning with like, do I really need another KitchenAid? No, like
No, it's the Kanye thing of
yeah.
I was sleeping on the plane and I woke up next to this water bottle and it's like, great, now I have to look after this water
What do I
bottle.
do with this water bottle? Exactly. Yeah, and really, it's like we talked about this before, but like the thing with the billionaires is like when you're when you're like middle class, like you have an item and you do it yourself, like you cook for yourself. When you become a little bit wealthier, you have an app that DoorDash brings you the food, and when you're a billionaire, you have a guy and it's your chef. And so a billionaire does not buy any kitchen cooking equipment ever, because the cook handles that and they don't even think about any of those items. And there's that for every single item in their life.
You have a personal shopper who brings you 50 items, you
Yeah.
try them on, and you keep 7 of them.
You know my size, just make sure that there's clothes in my closet in every house.
Yeah.
And that's the lifestyle. And so, did you see the SNL spoof of the Super Bowl ad? We got to stay on the Super Bowl ad because one interesting fact is that Super Bowl ad was not shot for the Super Bowl. That was the ad that they had been promoting on YouTube to millions of people. That ad before it aired on the Super Bowl had millions of ads. So in one way, like they kind of A/B tested it and knew that ad worked. But at the other way, it's like it's still just super lean culture. They're like,
again,
we got a Super Bowl slot. We're paying millions of dollars. Like we don't need to shoot something special for this or get a celebrity. Let's just run the ad that we've been posting on Facebook for the last
in
6
many
months.
ways, it's very counter to the approach again that many of their competitors would take, which is, hey, Amazon is probably planning their 2027 Super Bowl ad now. And it's this multi-year thing and they want to try to win awards, and Temu is just like, shop like a billionaire, baby. Shop like a billionaire.
Budweiser is going to shoot a new Clydesdale ad, probably 3 of them for this Super Bowl, and it's going to tell a story and it's going to be heritage and it's going to be very cinematic. And Temu's just like, yeah, like what's working on Google right now? Oh, okay, like just throw that on. Oh, it's a new ad slot. Throw it up. Yeah, no problem. Again, kind of beautiful. I don't know. I think it kind of worked for them. I bet they got good ROI on that. Yeah. But the SNL spoof is hilarious. They call it it's like some portmanteau between Temu and Shein. It's like Shimu or something like that. And it's like dress $10, shoes $5, working conditions fine, don't ask about it. And they're just how is it so cheap? And it's like, now with no lead. And they're like, that makes me feel like there might be lead in here. Like the whole idea of like suspiciously low prices is so funny to me. I just can't get enough of it. It's like, at a certain point, like $20 couch raises more questions than it answers.
Yeah, and to be honest, there's a very real scenario where Colin realized that he was going to be the fall guy for China. Would say, actually, there's so much evidence that China uses slave labor and they have labor camps and it's very dark. But Colin would have been the perfect guy to pin it all on for the CCP to be like, oh yeah, actually this was happening. And like, here's the guy. He was
Yep.
the guy selling you all these cheap products, and like it was on him,
Yep.
even if they had fully endorsed it. And so
Totally.
I think, yeah, so far it seems like he properly avoided being Jack Mod, but I
Yeah.
haven't seen him on any podcasts lately. So,
Let's get him on 20-minute VC.
Colin, come on X, go on 20 VC.
Let's do it.
I'll have you on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get to the bottom of this.
It might be a little contentious, but
so they launch in September of 2022. By February of 2023, six months later, Super Bowl ad, #1 shopping app in the US, massive growth. They expand their market presence. They launch in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand in March. Then they launch in all of Europe, and they also relocate their headquarters, I think, to Dublin, Ireland. And then in March of 2023, shortly after the Super Bowl ad, they get suspended from the Google Play Store due to malware found in off-store versions. Although Temu is unaffected, the incident raises security concerns, and the app is later reinstated after necessary fixes. And so they were doing some sort of exploit with the APIs in the app, and everyone's like, man, these guys are playing dirty. They're using,
yeah, I mean,
Nikita Beer would be proud.
Across the board, this is a company that undoubtedly does not care about anything other than flooding the market, gaining market share, and growing, right? Yep. Of course, many American companies at the end of the day are like that too, but they're a little bit less blatant about this. Like the entire history of PDD and Temu is issues around counterfeiting, supply chain practices, labor practices, data privacy. Like this is a company that probably is battling like 1,000 to 10,000 lawsuits at once continuously. Yep. So while they're not making US ad agencies money on Super Bowl ads, I'm sure their legal bills back home are steep. And I'm sure they're a good client to some US law firms that
they're fighting other Chinese companies. So Temu and Shein are in a legal battle in July of 2023. Temu filed an antitrust lawsuit in the U.S. accusing Shein of market abuse, while Shein secures a temporary restraining order against Temu over alleged copyright infringements. Legal actions ensue across multiple jurisdictions. What do they call this?
They call this slop on slop violence.
Slop on slop violence. I love it, and it's so funny because
the great slop wars of the 2020s.
The great slop wars. It's so funny to me because even though we're looking at this through a business context, through a geopolitical lens, and obviously we have the take that this is exploitative, this is a loophole, it's destroying American businesses, etc. But there are tens of millions of Americans that, to them, Temu is just, oh, cool, I get stuff for cheap. Like, I like it. And no, I don't run a competitive company. I don't have an e-commerce business, so it doesn't affect me. And the number of people, the number of constituents in the American democracy that are being negatively affected by Temu is in absolute terms much lower. Because if you're the number of people that are competing and getting their lunch ate by Temu is probably 1 million e-commerce people that work in e-commerce or drop shipping or something like that.
Yeah.
But the number of people that benefit is in the tens of millions, and so it is this but popular thing.
I gotta push back there
because
it is more complicated than that. If somebody is shopping for they decide, hey, I want a water filter, and they look at they go to Roar.com. They're like, this looks great. They've got all the certifications, and then they look on Temu and they see a similar water filter. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's 90% less, and then they buy that. Yep. That is dollars that could have gone to an American company that supports a bunch of other American businesses and manufacturers. It supports a team here in the US, and so it is very complicated, and so we have no idea how many billions of dollars of Temu's GMV would have just gone to America. It would have bought in less products.
I completely agree.
It has a bunch of downstream effects.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm merely making the statement that for a lot of Americans, they are addicted to consumerism. They're addicted to shopping, and they don't think about the second and third order effects of, hey, if I'm really supporting this app and buying, yes, I mean, I am getting these really cheap products, but maybe it'll make it harder for me to find a job, or maybe my town will be hollowed out because the economy is not there anymore in the U.S. because we're just purely an import-based society. So I think that's the backbone of the tariff renegotiation. Is this a fair deal for America?
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I was going to say, well, if we eliminate Temu and Shein and we just get every American addicted to buying cheap stocks,
there we go.
Imagine the potential there.
Massive.
Buying early.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so in 2024, they're in 50 countries in 16 months. On January 17th, Temu officially launches in South Africa, marking its 49th country since debuting in the U.S. Its footprint now expands over North America, Europe, Asia, Oceania, and parts of Latin America and the Middle East. So they are willing to ship anywhere. And the reason they can do this is because it's so asset light. All they need to do is just they're just a software platform that allows factories in China to ship as soon as they can get those packages to the ports. They can really go anywhere. So they just need to localize the website and they're good. It's not like Amazon where they have to set up a local distribution center, hire local drivers. There's really nothing. And it's not really building up the local economies. It's actually hollowing it out. And so in February of 2024, they do another Super Bowl and they hit user records again. They offer $15 million of giveaways at the Super Bowl. And early in 2024, the platform announces it has surpassed 100 million active users in the United States and over 130 million app downloads globally. So 100 million people in the US have shopped on Temu, and that is a big constituency. What I'm getting at is, like, it's similar to TikTok, where the number of people that are negatively affected by TikTok are the people that are thinking about, security, cybersecurity, geopolitics, thinking about competitive dynamics with American companies. But there are still 100 million people that are just like, TikTok is where I go for entertainment. Don't turn off my TV channel. And so it is this complicated, there is a constituency there. They're not highly politically active. They don't donate to politics in that way. But if you just polled the American people, should you ban Temu? A lot of people would say, no, I like cheap stuff. It's fine. It's where I spin a wheel and get free stuff. Like, why are you banning my fun thing? And that's it.
It's in the same way that Pump Fun is a digital casino. You could see, PDD or Temu as like a carnival, right? Where it's just like, I'm like spinning the wheel, I'm winning. It's entertainment, it's social, it's
Yep.
Anyways.
And so the company refines its logistics model to manage scale, while PDD Holdings faces increased regulatory scrutiny over counterfeiting, supply chain practices, and data privacy. And the legal battles between Temu and Shein have continued into 2024. Today, in less than a decade, PDD's parent company has become a global e-commerce powerhouse, which includes Pinduoduo in China and Temu abroad. A reported $34.7 billion in revenue and $8.5 billion in net income in 2023. I'm sure it's higher in 2024. I don't know if they've done earnings yet, though. PDD remains one of China's top online shopping destinations with over 800 million users. That is staggering. It's a billion person country. So that's like massive market penetration. While Temu's low prices and viral marketing have captured significant international market share, the company continues to navigate rapid growth, fierce competition, and regulatory challenges as it looks to the future. And so we will be staying on top of that.
One thing that's interesting. Yeah. So they have the benefit of, so Temu at some point, do you have the specifics? But I believe they rolled back in Temu, which was independently listed, into the main PDD Holdings. And so the original Temu that went public on the NASDAQ is now just a part of PDD Holdings, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
And so the benefit of that is, like, even under all this scrutiny, lawsuits, all this stuff, you're going to be shocked. I'm on public right now. The stock is up.
How much is it up? Give me the data. Give me the public.com data.
So they're sitting at the PDD Holdings is sitting at $111 right now.
Wow. And
it was in March of 2022, it was sitting at like $40 a share. So they're still like a juggernaut. and have done tremendously well, just again, under fire from all of these lawsuits and things like that, but they just steamrolling the market. And I think that's really, in many ways, because of that, they truly are a software company. They're not a retail.
100%. Let's go through who got rich off of this. I think that's always an interesting question to ask. Obviously, the early team made a ton of money. There was an interesting transaction where as in 2020, Colin Wang transferred $7.7 billion worth of shares to the partners, effectively giving slices of his fortune to the top lieutenants. I thought that was very interesting that he did that after the fact. Like, they'd already grown. Obviously, they had stock grants early on, but he was just like, I've made so much money. I'm just going to hook up the boys.
He's either an absolute, brother of the week, Chinese brother of the week potential, or they were all going to throw him under the bus so hard that they said, if you don't give us billions of dollars, like, you're going to be the fall guy for all of this, and we're going to, drag you through the streets.
Yeah.
Jack Ma style.
Yeah, the dynamics over there are very, very hard to get right. So Gaorong Capital, formerly Banyan Capital, was an early VC investor. It's a Beijing-based VC firm. They led the Series A round, and Zhenjiang, Gaorong's founding partner, first backed Colin by leading an $8 million investment round when PDD was just an idea. This gave them an 8% stake pre-IPO. It was probably a higher round and then got diluted down a little bit. Tencent came in, and they were able to leverage WeChat to fuel PDD's growth. Tencent joined in the Series B and later led a huge $1.4 billion Series D in early 2018. And so they had 16% at IPO. Sequoia Capital China, led by Neil Shen. They've since rebranded to Hongshan. By the time of the IPO, Sequoia was principal shareholder, even agreeing to purchase 150 million shares at IPO to support the listing. Sequoia's stake post-IPO was on the order of 6 to 7%. In March of 2021, Sequoia Capital still held 6.4% of PDD. And so they are just printing over there. Sequoia China is really the Sequoia of China. You can't make it up. IDG Capital is one of China's oldest VC firms. They were investors during the growth phase. They participated in the Series C round. New Horizon Capital was a PE fund that went in the Series B. And then Lightspeed China also got a bite of the Series B, which was 110 million. And there's a couple other investors here. So massive wealth creation event for Chinese VCs and American VCs that had Chinese arms at the time. So it's a very fascinating story.
Yeah, completely crazy story. Incredible execution.
Yep.
They will talk about the slop wars of the 2020s for decades to come. And open invite, Colin. Come on the show anytime. We'll put you in the truth zone a little bit on the data privacy, labor, supply chain crises, things like that. But if you're ready for that, you want to take some heat.
Yeah. But we will also sing your praises for massive wealth creation. We'll pop a bottle of Dom Perignon with you.
We'll hit the size gong. It'll be a mix. It'll come out positive.
Yeah. Yeah. It won't be a puff piece. It'll be hard nosed, but
we will ask you about the Uyghurs.
Yep.
We got to know.
But we'll also ask you what kind of car you drive. And what kind
of watch.
And what kind of mansion you're building.
And how many watches you bought on Bezel.
Yeah. It'll probably be the best interview you'll ever do. It'll be great. Come on. Well, let's move on to the timeline. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around for our Temu deep dive. We got a solid 40 minutes of timeline today. This is great. Very excited. Let's kick it off with this post from Restructuring. Day in the life of an investor at U.S. Sovereign Wealth Fund. Hate to admit it, but sometimes Wall Street Oasis has some hilarious content. Jordy, you threw this in the feed. Why'd you like it?
Well, so backstory, they did an executive order to create a U.S. sovereign wealth fund. So Trump signed this, I think, a couple of days ago at this point. A lot of people are speculating on what's going to go in it. A lot of people, a friend of this show, Jack Rains, said, we already have a sovereign wealth fund. It's called SPY. But But anyways, I just thought this was hilarious, so I'll read it. So this is somebody who's an analyst in private credit. He says, it's 7 a.m. I wake up in my Georgetown apartment to a text from my MD. Need a deck on strategic lithium reserves by noon. Use the DoD template. I have no idea what that means, but I nod, sip my government-subsidized coffee, and I get to work. By 8:30 a.m., I'm at my desk in the Eisenhower Executive Office building, surrounded by former Goldman guys who rebranded as patriotic investors. Our mandate, deploy 1 trillion of taxpayer money into high priority national interests. In reality, we're LARPing as PE bros while writing checks to companies with more lobbyists than revenue. By 10 a.m., I have an IC meeting. The Secretary of Commerce dials in, asking why we aren't buying up more farmland. The MD replies, sir, we already own 15% of Iowa. And then I get cut off there, but
we nod solemnly.
Anyway.
America first. I'll keep reading. Lunch is catered from the White House mess hall. I sit next to a guy from the Pentagon's AI Readiness Task Force. He assures me that investing $500 million into a surveillance drone startup run by a 24-year-old Stanford dropout is critical for national security. I write synergies in my notes and take a bite of my taxpayer-funded steak. By 3 p.m., we're structuring a bailout for a failing EV battery company. Treasury wants it to be a loan, but the MD insists on pref equity with board seats. We're not just capital, we're strategic. Everyone nods, except for the one career bureaucrat who still thinks this is about fiscal responsibility. At 6 p.m., I'm working on a term sheet for an emergency lithium mining JV with some guys in Wyoming. The deal terms, equity upside, mineral rights, and a direct line to the Fed for liquidity. Somewhere, Larry Fink sheds a single tear of pride. By 9 p.m., the interns are arguing whether we should issue high-yield bonds backed by military surplus. Someone jokes about tokenizing Social Security. Everyone laughs, but someone writes it down. At 11:30 p.m., I close my laptop and stare at the framed photo of Teddy Roosevelt in my office. I realize I'm no longer just a finance guy. I'm a statesman. This is the most prestigious exit. This is paradise.
This is paradise. Yeah. So anyways, this would be applying, if tech is Doge, the sovereign wealth fund is going to be all the PE brothers just having a heyday. I think it's cool. I think it's cool to think about. We'll see how it plays out. Obviously, the BTC maxis say that the sovereign wealth fund should just be $1 trillion of Bitcoin, and I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of stuff got in. But it is funny how these if there was a sovereign wealth fund, I imagine that it would ultimately be Trump as playing Massa, where people come and pitch him crazier and crazier, bigger and bigger ideas. And then, because that's what happens in many ways, that's what happens in, if you're going to try to raise, $1 billion from Saudi Arabia for some project, MBS will, at that ticket price, MBS probably has to like verbally sign off on the deal, right? Maybe he's not taking the pitch meeting, but anytime you're raising money from what's effectively a kingdom, the king's got to sign off, or he's got a guy who is, responsible for making sure that they don't do anything silly. But then when you're playing with dollars of that size, you end up doing, he's jokes about giving a 24-year-old $500 million, but, it's only 50 basis points of the fund. Why not just, or no, even less.
Even less.
Crazy.
Yeah, this is so funny to me because like the idea, I'm very pro the idea of a U.S. sovereign wealth fund, but our country is in massive debt. Like we don't have a surplus right now. We don't have money like to put into a sovereign wealth fund. I think I don't know where it would come from. We need to pay down our debt first, right?
World
I think that's how it works.
On leverage. So
yeah, I don't know. All the rules have been thrown out. It's a new day. Anything is possible. But good to see some analysts having fun on Wall Street Oasis.